Chris White here from Gary White Racing, here to share a little bit of wisdom with you that I've discovered today after receiving some fittings from a Chinese eBay seller. Now, I've always been interested to look at and test the quality of some of the Chinese hose ends, AN hose ends, for the very cheap prices that you see on eBay. And I've always been a little reluctant to do it, obviously. Generally, when you're using AN hose ends, you're using them in situations where if they were to fail, you would have a catastrophic problem. If it's fuel delivery or a fuel return, of course, that means fire, and you don't want that in a race car or any other car. If it's an oil delivery issue, of course, and they fail, then you could have catastrophic engine damage as a result of loss of oil pressure. So you don't really want to give them a try under these circumstances, and generally the money you save, it's a false economy really, because if you save a few bucks on a hose end and it fails and it costs you some thousands of dollars, or worse still, injury or death, then it doesn't really add up, does it? However, I have a reason, or at least a potential situation where I might be able to get away with using inexpensive hose ends, and if they fail, it won't cause me major grief. In short, what I need to do is, on my current race car, which is a Datsun 1200 IPRA over 2 litre car, it's turbocharged. It has a CAMS legal, catch can, and it does fill the catch can fairly quickly. It's got a bit of blow by, it's running big boost, and the CA18 setup requires fairly high quality venting into the catch can, otherwise it tends to trap a lot of oil in the cylinder head. So what I've been discovering is I'm filling the catch can, but the oil that's going into the catch can is clean, and I would like to just drain it back into the sump. As a consequence, what I need to do is build a drain from the catch can into the sump, and that's not a difficult thing to do. I need to add a bung onto the catch can, and then I need to run some line down into the turbo drain, tee off the turbo drain, use a reverse flapper valve so that the turbo drain doesn't push oil back into the catch can, although I doubt that, because it's not under pressure, it shouldn't do that. It's an 8 AN return, so I don't think it would be pushing oil under pressure uphill into the catch can, which sits about a foot above it. But I thought I'd put a flapper valve on it anyway and give that a try. However, my thinking is that if any of these components fail, I will have plenty of warning. It should leak before it fails, and even if it was a complete failure, I'm going to have plenty of warning, and it's not going to destroy anything before I can stop the car and pull it off. So for that reason, I thought this would be an ideal opportunity to try some cheap AN fittings, the Chinese ones, and give them a crack in a situation where their failure wouldn't be catastrophic. So with that in mind, I went ahead and purchased some AN fittings, and I've purchased a number from different suppliers at different price points, and I've been surprised at what I've gotten. The quality variance is significant, and in addition to that, I'm going to compare them to some Aeroflow fittings, which I also have here, noting that Aeroflow fittings are hardly top of the range stuff either. I mean, as far as brand name fittings go, Aeroflow in Australia at least, I'm pretty sure they're made in China as well, but they're made in China by someone who clearly knows what they're doing, and their quality control is pretty good. I've never had an Aeroflow fitting fail. Others may, but I've not had any issues with them. Generally though, having said that, I use either Speedflow, the Australian fitting, or I'll use Earls or Russell. I've also used the Summit brand fittings from Summit Racing. I've used ProFlow and Raceworks fittings here in Australia, which again are a seemingly lower rent. I mean, they're pretty good, but they're, I'd say, sort of on par with Aeroflow, although some people probably would have a different view there, but that's been my observation. ProFlow, Aeroflow and Raceworks are all sort of similar. They're not to the standard of a Speedflow or an Earls fitting, but of course they're priced lower, so that's what you would expect. I've also used Frigola fittings. I've used a variety of different fittings, probably every single brand you can point to. I've had a crack at them in different sort of applications. I've used them for fuel lines, oil lines in a dry sump setting. I've used them in a variety of ways. Anyways, without further ado though, let's have a look at these Chinese fittings and give you a look at what I've received, and I'll also talk you through how much each cost.
Okay, so first up is an 8N ORB fitting, a ring boss, to an 8N male fitting. I'm sorry for the quality of this video. I'm shooting it on my phone, so it probably doesn't look fabulous. I'm going to try and get it as best I can in the light we have. You can see that the part doesn't look too bad, to be honest. I've looked at a lot of these sorts of fittings, these O-ring boss fittings, which you use for things like, I mean, ordinarily in 6N you'd use them for applications like in and out of your fuel pressure regulator or fuel rail and fuel pumps, that sort of thing. This fitting is not too bad of a quality. I'm not sure if that shows up on the video, but the machining isn't too bad. It's not inconsistent with what I would expect from a fitting of higher quality. It seems to fit okay. I have some other fittings here, of course, which I'm going to go through in a minute, and I've tried to screw them in. There's no issues with threading. They don't bind or anything. Yeah, the manufacturing tolerance looks okay. As you can see, it seems to have been bored straight through the middle. Doesn't appear to be any offset in the bore, which I will show you in a moment on some of the hose fittings is not always the case with these cheap Chinese fittings. And also you can see that they have done the right thing on the back end of it by, I'm not sure if that's visible in the film there, but they've done the right thing, and it's they've actually relieved or properly flowed the inside section, so it is a beveled edge or a smooth sort of ramp into the fitting. Sorry, this doesn't really seem to want to come out on my phone. Anyway, so that's the first fitting. To be honest, the quality of the fitting and what I've seen, if I could get similar fittings, I wouldn't be afraid to use them in mission critical applications. This fitting is fine. Now, in terms of price point, that particular fitting I paid about $6.80 for delivered, and if you compare that to the speed flow and aeroflow fittings of the same type, they're currently going for around $13 to $14 shipped, so about half price of what you'd normally pay for a speed flow or an aeroflow. I think that came from one of the UK based sellers of these Chinese fittings, and it was delivered very quickly. It was here in about a week, slightly over. Royal Mail tend to do a pretty good job. So that's the 8N ORB fitting. Again, a saving of roughly 50% over an aeroflow or a speed flow fitting, and pretty good quality piece by the looks of it. We'll see, obviously, in use how it goes. Okay, so this one's really interesting. This is an 8N flapper valve. Many of you will have used these on oil breathers and the like. If you're using a dry sump application, obviously, and you want to pull some crankcase vacuum, if you want to use them in a 6N application or even a big fuel line, a V8 or something, you might be using an 8N fuel line. You might be using them to stop flow back out of the fuel line so that the pump doesn't have to suck air. Anyways, they're a fairly common thing that you might use all the time. This flapper valve cost me $11.60 delivered. That's Australian dollars. Compared to similar prices for aeroflow and speed flow products, the aeroflows are about $50, speed flows are about $60. So it's a huge saving. You could buy at least 4, possibly even 5 of these for the same price as a higher quality substitute. And I have to say again, the quality of this particular piece is pretty impressive. Again, it came from one of the UK-based resellers of these Chinese items, and it was delivered very quickly. I can tell you, having sucked and blown through it, it does appear to do its job, and it certainly appears quite similar, at least in outside design, to the similar products from Speedflow and Aeroflow. Not sure, again, given the nature of how these things work, it looks pretty good, and I would probably be prepared to give one a crack in another situation, certainly in a crankcase vacuum situation, where it wouldn't be critical if it failed. I'd be prepared to give one a crack. I'm not sure I'd try it in a fuel situation, but we'll see. Again, fuel is one of those things you don't want to get burned in a race car. You don't want to get trapped in a burning car. So, I don't skimp on those things. But yeah, look, it's not bad, and for the price, it's pretty incredible, really. So that's an 8-an flapper valve. All right, the next one, pretty amazing. This is a 45-degree 8-an swivel coupler. So it's swivel on both ends, as you can see. The ends swivel, and it swivels around. And it's a coupler to take two male fittings and turn them around 45 degrees. Now, having not checked this yet again, because these couplers, the biggest deal is obviously ensuring that they don't leak, but it looks pretty good. It's a full flow coupler at 45 degrees. This particular item cost me $10.50 delivered, compared to similar comparable products from Aeroflow and Speedflow, which at present are looking like somewhere between $45 and $55. You can get them a bit cheaper if you go the ProFlow or RatesWorks style. You can get them for about $25 to $30, but this cost me $10.50 delivered, and it's, I got to tell you, it's a good looking piece. Looks every bit as good as anything I've seen from Aeroflow, and probably the most impressive of all my Chinese fittings purchased. But again, the proof will be in the pudding to see if it leaks. Noting I'm not going to be putting too much pressure through these, so I'm not going to be giving them a really tough test. But even so, I mean, look, it looks pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with that for $10.50. Okay, last of the fittings before we go on to the hose ends is this T-piece that I bought, which has a swivel on one end, right here, so this swivels around, and a 2-male T. Now I'm going to tee into the turbo return into the sump, which is why I need this, and I paid $13.80 Australian for that delivered, again from one of the sellers. I'll try and give you links in the description to these particular fittings where I found them. Again, a pretty good looking fitting, really. I wouldn't say it's fabulous, but it's not bad. I've seen fittings no better, certainly from some of the major manufacturers at a lower cost. In my travels. I won't mention names. It's certainly not, though, to the quality of one of the major ones, like an Earls or a Speedflow or a Russell. But certainly some of the lower end manufacturers of brand name fittings, I've seen fittings no better than this. So look, it's not bad. Again, it's machined properly. It's got the proper reliefs where they need to be. It appears that the boring has been done fairly accurately through the T-piece. The threads are good. Again, I've tried them all. They don't bind. The swivel piece is a little bit stiff, but nothing serious. Just a little bit snug, I would say. But I'm not going to have any concerns using that. And again, $13.80. Now that's compared to similar products, the sort of Aeroflow style, are around $26, up to sort of mid 30s to higher 30s for things from Speedflow and Earls. So a reasonable saving there. Perhaps not as much in percentage terms as some of the other fittings, but it is an unusual fitting. So I'm guessing that the Chinese don't pump out as many of these as the other ones, and potentially the profit margins aren't there. But look, not a bad fitting, really. And any one of those fittings, I'm not afraid of using any of them. They all look pretty good. All right, now what I'm about to show you is a fitting that I bought recently from an Australian-based eBay seller. Here's one that I've unwrapped. This is how they come, just in a little Ziploc packet here. and this is what they look like unwrapped. Now I purchased this from an Australian-based seller of these Chinese fittings, and I'll be honest, I bought pretty much the cheapest, well not exactly the cheapest, there were cheaper ones, but I bought the cheapest one from a seller with over 99% feedback that I could find based in Australia. I needed them fairly quickly. I'm hoping to race next week and want to get this set up in the car. So I paid $7.60 each for these fittings, and they are 8-an straight hose ends, so a pretty basic thing. This compares to similar speed flow and aeroflow fittings somewhere between the $17 to $20 mark, at least on current prices on eBay. These fittings, I've got to be honest, they're not as good as these hose ends aren't as good as what I saw in the fittings that I bought from the UK-based sellers. And maybe it's just this one seller, because again, I bought them all from the same place, and I bought some hose from him too, which I'll show you in a minute. You can see, look, they screw together fine. Nothing seems to be binding up here in the hose end style, but the finish, now it's hard to see in the camera, but it's sort of a more matte finish than smooth. Whereas if I show you, for example, that finish there as compared to, let's say, the 45-degree fitting that we saw earlier, you can kind of see the difference there. That 45-degree fitting has that sort of up and down machining that you're used to seeing on AN fittings, whereas this almost looks like it's been powder coated. It hasn't, but the machining is not to the same standard, at least so it looks. And you know, it's the same sort of finish on the inside, which would lead me to believe that, you know, unless you snug them down, there's a possibility that that's not going to be a perfect seal. Although, again, I'm not concerned about using it for my application. I think they'll hold together as long as the actual material doesn't fail. But the other thing that causes me some concern, not just the finish, because that's not really too bad. It's a bit unusual. I'm not used to seeing that on an AN-based fitting, but it's this. And as you can see, that hole is not bored straight through the fitting. And again, the QA and the quality control, at least out of these particular fittings, looks pretty second-hand. The cutter obviously is in the screw-on end. It looks fine, and so again, I don't believe they're going to come apart. But yeah, the hose fitting and everything screws together. But you get what you pay for here. I think I might be, if I do this again, I might stick to the UK-based sellers, who I will recommend in the description. I'm not going to mention who this is in the description. Again, you know, I bought from an Australian-based seller of the cheap AN fittings. I bought from someone with over 99% feedback. There are many who have less than 99%, which would lead me to believe that they might sell even worse products. Either that or they deliver worse service in terms of their delivery and punctuality and what have you. Yeah, look, that fitting is not fabulous. I would not be happy using that in any mission critical application. And if I show you some of the other ones, here's another one. You can see I've got a bunch here. They all suffer from the same problem. So this is the one here that I just showed you. If I show you this one, you'll see again the same sort of thing here. And then this 90-degree fitting here. It looks a bit better in terms of the way it's done, but you know, the finish is very similar. Again, you can sort of see it's got that matte finish as opposed to the sort of far more refined, or at least far more familiar look that this one has here, the 45 that I showed you before. But again, you know, these fittings, this particular one here, so the 90-degree fittings cost a bit less than, again, what you would expect from similar, well, a lot less than what you would expect from similar fittings. But if you look at this, I mean, this is maybe 60% cheaper. You know, to be honest, I'd be looking elsewhere. And if it wasn't the sort of application I'm looking at, which doesn't require absolute reliability, and if we have a weep or two of oil, I'm not going to shed any tears. I'll just replace the setup. You know, certainly if I screw it together and the things fail, I'll be letting you all know, and I'll come back with an update. But yeah, look, the hose fittings that I bought, not as great, certainly as the other fittings, and I'd be recommending hose ends at least of a higher quality, or from a different seller, maybe the same sellers, as I will link in the description, the UK based ones. But I was in a hurry, I needed something in Australia, something quick, and I wasn't concerned too much about quality, really wanted them in a hurry. So yeah, interesting, and I'll come back to you all with an update on how these go together and how they perform under race conditions. Again, not under pressure, but certainly in an arduous and high temperature under bonnet environment in my race car. Thanks everyone.